Recap Symfony course and project. The source code inside controllers. The video is Entity Manager and digging into the controller. Using an Entity Manager object, you can write code in the controller which can work with the doctrine entity. The doctrine entities are stored in what is called repository objects. The controller object has access to the Entity Manager object. Remember, the code that I, as a user of the framework, am going to write, I am going to write it inside the controller, okay? So, the controller object has access to the Entity Manager object. In other words, there's either a method or a property of the controller which gives me access to the Entity Manager object. And the Entity Manager object has access to the repository object. Now remember, each entity has its own repository object. Some of the controller's CRUD methods get past some useful objects also. So here I'm talking about how we access all these objects. Remember, this framework uses OOP exclusively. So some of the controller's CRUD methods get past some useful objects. For example, the createAction method gets a request object passed to it as a parameter. Remember, this is the createAction. The createAction is usually called by a POST request rather than a GET request. So there is some form data that is coming in with the request. Some controller methods can be annotated with the @method POST, while others can have the @method GET. That signifies or configures the expected method for the request that relates to that particular function or method for the controller. Now, that paragraph I just said, I used the word method twice. Each time it meant something different. It's not the same. First, the @method is referring to the method of the request for the web page. The second time I used the word method, I was talking about which method of the controller. In other words, which function for that class. Okay? So let me say this again. Some controller methods can be annotated with @method POST, while others can have @method GET. This is the annotation for the method, which is the method of the controller. The Entity Manager is what you use to create and delete entities, both in the server's memory, in other words, in the memory that the application is using, the computer's memory, and in the database, which is the permanent storage. So that's what the Entity Manager does. It's for storing, deleting, and otherwise handling individual entity objects. Okay, that's it for this video.